Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, will you take roll, please?
Vice Chair Burton,
Present.
Commissioner Puppy, Commissioner Ragsdale,
Present.
Commissioner Kupsick, Commissioner Damasio, Commissioner Bassler,
Here.
Alternate Hester, Alternate Manuel,
Present.
Alternate Belshie, Alternate McDonald, and Alternate Trupiano.
Here.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from August 13th, 2024 Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting. Are there any edits or to the minutes? If not, may I have a motion, please?
A motion to approve the minutes as submitted. Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any objections? Need a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Any opposed? Thank you. Come to the regular agenda. Items on the regular agenda will include a full presentation from staff and discussion by the commission. Not all items require a public hearing, but for those that do, the public may comment after the public hearing is opened. Members of the public wishing to comment during a public hearing are requested to fill out a speaker card, which can be obtained from the secretary. Speakers are requested to utilize the podium to the right, and the comments during a public hearing will be limited to 3 minutes. All public statements must be addressed to the commission. When the speaker has completed speaking and takes a seat, the chair may direct any questions to city staff if desired. First item on the agenda is item 3A, Festival Ranch Planning Area 3, PUPF Parcel 37, Preliminary Plat, PLZS 22-00040. We will be taking public meeting action on the preliminary plat with 139 residential parcels and 6 tracts located approximately 550 feet west of the intersection of 281st Avenue and Beardsley Parkway, subject to conditions A through M. Mr. Wingard.
Commission, glad to see you all here tonight. Pretty innocuous case to start off with the Festival Ranch preliminary plat. This is parcel 37. As we go on in this vicinity map, you'll see in red where this is located. This is a little bit western than a lot of the established Festival Ranch neighborhood. These neighbors are, you've probably seen in the past some of the preliminary plats for the properties surrounding this proposed preliminary plat. General plan, this is in the neighborhood general plan designation. And zoning is this, and almost everything up through there is planned community, PC. Well, like we said, the applicant, this is a preliminary plat. The applicant is Frank Koo of Wooden Patel and Associates. The location, as you said before, was 550 feet west of the intersection of 281st Avenue and Beardsley Parkway, well within the Festival Ranch neighborhood. This is a smaller preliminary plat, only about 33.68 acres, which results in a density of about 4.13 dwelling units per acre. And like said before, this is a subdivision of 139 single-family homes. This is the plat before you. Just to illustrate, this will have full access from the Beardsley Parkway to the south, as well as 3 other accesses into the other neighborhoods that are undergoing review at this point. Now, there are 2 different lot sizes in here, a 50-foot and a 45. Your 50s are going to be along the north in red, while the 45s are going to be in blue to the south. You'll notice that the lots north of the red lots are 50-foot wide lots, and some of the lots to the east are more like 45. So this is blending in with the density that is established in this neighborhood. Open space in here is plentiful and will contain trails and open space that will also connect to the rest of the development. As you can see here, the red trail shows the trails that are along the rights-of-way surrounding this. The one along the southern edge along Beardsley is an 8-foot wide public. This is public not just for those residents, but for the residents of Buckeye, that this is contributing to our long-term goal of having all these trails for public use. So this is another little section of trail that will go into place for here. Development standards for the 2 lots, of course, like we said, they're 45 and 50. The side and corner is typical of Festival Ranch, which is 5, and then when you're on the corner, it has to be 10, rear is 15. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about the front. The garage face is 18 feet to the property line, but is 20 feet to the back of curb. Usually the property line is just north of the back of curb on a property. So we want to make sure that these people with these big trucks that are bigger than my first apartment can fit in there without blocking the sidewalk through here. The living area, this would be just if you had living area come here, a bedroom off the front, it can be 10 feet setback. And then non-livable is 10 area. And what that would be is a side-loaded garage that would come around and go in through there. And these are typical of what is provided in the Festival Ranch CMP. Our findings is this does conform with the general plan, the development code, and the Festival Ranch CMP, and there is no outstanding issues from any of the departments regarding this project. And with that, I will pass this back and conclude my presentation, subject to any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Wingard? Does the applicant wish to speak, Bart?
No, the applicant is here, but no, does not have a presentation prepared.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. Is this like an infill around, is there stuff around there already, parcels that have houses already built?
Well, as you see around here, they are going through the same type of review this is. So they're going through the preliminary plat and the final plat reviews on these neighborhoods that are surrounding there. You'll see the existing ones going, or the proposed ones going around that. So this is all going together with a bunch of other residential projects that are anticipating construction.
Thank you.
No questions.
Mr. Axdale?
No questions.
No questions.
And I having none. Commission, I'd like to call for a motion.
We have to have a public meeting first.
No.
Oh.
Motion?
I'd like,
Public meeting, not a hearing.
we are doing a public meeting?
Public meeting, not a hearing. Hearing is called the public. This does not require a call to public.
Yeah, Chair, you guys are good to take a motion and a vote.
I'll make a motion that we approve Festival Ranch Planning Area 3, parcel 37, PLZS-22-00040.
I'll second that.
With conditions.
Conditions A through M.
Oh, sorry. I'll second it.
It's been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry. Any opposed? Motion passes. All right. On to 3B, AZ 85 Industrial Park, Planned Area Development Rezone, PLZZ 22-00013, public hearing, and a motion to recommend approval subject to conditions. A request to rezone approximately 143.9 acres, subject area located on the northeast corner of State Route 85 and Southern Avenue from planned residential to planned area development to facilitate light industrial development on the property. Mr. Banda.
Vice Chair, members of the commission, there has been a request to take this item out of order. So if it pleases the Vice Chair and commission, if you would like to proceed out of order on the agenda to item 3C and then come back to item 3B. I believe that there was additional discussion from the applicant on the item before proceeding tonight.
Do I need to do anything? Okay.
Good evening, Chair. Oh, sorry. Introduce the item, please. I'm sorry to step on your toes.
It's okay, it's my first time.
Hey, this is unusual. This is not something we do every day.
All right, item 3C, AIM Recycling Site Plan, PLZ SP-23-00017. We will be conducting a public meeting and approve subject to conditions A through RR, a site plan for Phase 1 of the proposed rail-served recycling facility consisting of 61,812 square foot downstream sorting, Building A, 15,493 square feet, administrative and non-ferrous processing building expandable to 56,000 square feet, and related screen storage yards and loading area on 44.3 gross acres of property located approximately 1,300 feet west of the southwest corner of Palo Verde Road and Baseline Road within the General Commerce Zoning District. Now, Mr. Ken Galika.
Good evening, Chair. That was a mouthful. I feel like I don't need to present now.
All of these are.
As the Chair mentioned, this is a proposal for a site plan approval for AIM Recycling, American Iron and Metals, I believe is what the acronym stands for. If I get that wrong, please correct me. The first phase of the project, which is all we're here for tonight, is 44.3 gross acres. The overall property is 95.9 acres, so there's about 51.5 acres that are not part of this application, that before anything can happen on, the applicant would come back in for another site plan. Property is zoned general commerce, as you're mostly familiar with. General commerce zoning district is one of our quote unquote obsolete zoning districts, meaning it was from a prior development code, but properties that have that zoning are able to develop under the allowances based on that previous code. In this particular case, I'll get into the use specifically a little bit later, but staff does feel that the proposed use is permitted in the general commerce zone. It's also in the employment general plan designation adjacent to the Union Pacific Railroad tracks. So that is, of course, typically industrial properties when you do have those rail next to them. As you can see in the aerial photograph on the left side of your screen, the area is entirely agricultural that surrounds this. There's a dairy farm to the north, another dairy farm to the southeast of this project, and then farm fields to the east, west, and south of the site. The zoning map shows most of the properties in the area are still in unincorporated Maricopa County. That's that gray color. The properties that have been annexed are all zoned general commerce for industrial development. Before I show you the site plan, I wanted to talk about what the actual proposed use is. So what is a recycling center? Well, I think that terminology could probably apply to 20 different types of facilities. So I want to describe what this particular recycling center is proposing to do. This site will receive shipments of pre-shredded recyclable metals via both train and truckload that will come to the site in barrels, essentially, or some sort of containers. And they will be brought to the site for sorting, essentially. So a car will get shredded at the Phoenix location or at Ames, California location, be chopped up into small pieces. Those small pieces will be basically placed on a conveyor system, run through this machinery, which will separate the aluminum from the stainless steel to the steel to the whatever, iron, rubber, all those types of things will be separated from one another, rebundled up in batches of similar elements, and then sent off the site for further processing. So really, this is a sorting facility. There will be some pile and bin storage of materials on the site. Those will be limited in height and fully screened from off-property by a combination of landscaping, walls, and fences. There will be, again, no crushing or shredding on this property. There won't be any junk, what's the right word? A junkyard type of situation where there's inoperable vehicles that are just piling up on the property. The facility will also have a kind of retail side to it where if you collect a carload of aluminum cans, for instance, you can't take them there. The facility could buy those from you and then transport those off-site via truck for further processing. Hours of operation are proposed Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. With maintenance occurring outside of those typical operating hours. All right, so I mentioned this is a phased development. The highlighted portion on your screen, 44.3 acres, is what we're talking about today. The remainder of the property, if anything is to happen on that in the future, we'll be right back here for those plans at a later time. The facility, the primary building, the building that is going to do most of the work for this facility is a 61,000 and change square foot downstream sorting building. This is a building that will feature kind of conveyor automated system that will sort the materials, as I mentioned when I was describing the use. That'll be 63 feet in height. Up at the front of the site, next to Baseline Road, is the administration and processing building. That's smaller, about a quarter of the size of the sorting building, at least initially. It is designed to be expandable up to 56,000 square feet. That's be slightly smaller, 39 feet in height. The pink portion is the expandable portion. The purple here is the initial 15,000 and change. Between that, the two buildings will be basically the materials storage bins and yards. The green represent storage bins, and then the blue areas are basically the service loading and pile storage areas. Within those areas, materials will be limited to a height of, I believe, 16 feet maximum, and we have walls and landscaping on the perimeter of the site that will block views of those materials. This site is attractive for this use because of the adjacency of the Union Pacific Railroad. In this case, they are working with UPRR to bring line extension onto their property. As you can see in the red, it extends and then continues north along the western property line of this site. There are tracks here for storage of the cars while they're loading, and then they can be put back onto the main line. There's a truck parking area as well, blue area. And then your customer and employee parking is located to the north of the building up against baseline. Oh, I forgot about this last part. There is a city well site, 150 by 150, adjacent to Baseline Road as well. In terms of access, there are 2 driveways for public use provided. The primary access is at the northwest corner of the site. It will allow full 4-way turning movements, left in, left out, right in, right out, onto Baseline Road. So you can go eastbound or westbound upon exiting, and you can enter the site both directions as well. This is designed in the future when the property to the west is to develop. It's currently a farm field, that this can be converted to a shared access to benefit both sites. The secondary access is kind of in the middle of the site or at the northeast corner of phase 1. This is a full movement as well, with the exception of left out being prohibited. So we'd call this a 3/4 access. You can make a right in, you can make a left in to the site, both movements. You can make a right out of the site. You just cannot go left onto Baseline going westbound. And then there's an emergency only access driveway through the future phase property, specifically for fire and emergency vehicles should they need to access the site and there's something wrong with Baseline at the time. Regard to landscaping and screening, anytime we have an industrial use, we want to prioritize these types of features to make sure from the perspective of adjacent streets as well as adjacent properties that we're presenting a site that looks attractive and essentially hides any sort of industrial activity that is occurring. So in this particular case, there's a 8-foot masonry screen wall that's provided adjacent to Baseline Road, and it does wrap or return around the 2 corners a certain distance. So from the perspective of the street, it looks like it continues. The remainder of the property, as is permitted in industrial zoning districts, when not adjacent to public streets, is a vinyl coated chain link fence that will have the privacy slats to prevent views. It'll essentially be a solid screen. In conformance with the development code, there's a 30-foot landscape buffer that is provided along the west property line. That's required because the agricultural property to the west is technically zoned residential within Maricopa County, Rural 43. So that 30-foot buffer accommodates 36-inch or fairly large trees at planting that repeat at a regular 20 to 25-foot interval to create a real solid vegetative screen. There's also a 60-foot, which is double your typical landscape setback adjacent to Baseline Road, create a lush appearance from the street. That'll be fully landscaped with trees and shrubs. The 25-foot spacing of trees continues along kind of the edge of the wall that's provided, and then actually wraps around a small distance on the east side of the property as well. That's to allow, from the perspective of a vehicle that might be traveling westbound on Baseline Road, when they're looking into the site, those trees will, in combination with the walls and fences, block any material storage. This is what the site is expected to look like. The top left picture is just a close-up view looking at the project from the east. It is a pretty attractive contemporary building, utilizes block as well as concrete and some metal elements, as well as translucent polycarbonate paneling, which would basically be a transparent window-like surface that'll let light out and kind of give this a pretty appearance, and especially at nighttime. You can see from the bottom left picture, this is an elevated view, so unless you're hovering in a hot air balloon or something, you'd be lower than this, but this is kind of looking into the site from the southwest, from the northwest. The picture on the top right is from the intersection of Palo Verde Road and Baseline. So you can see, you don't see any objectionable views as you drive by this particular property. With regard to participation, there was a notice of application that the that the developer sent out back in 2023. They were contacted, and the city was contacted by representatives of the immediately adjacent owner to the west, which is a agricultural operation out of Michigan called Miedma Produce Incorporated. They did raise objections to the proposed use. The city has had a lot of conversations with representatives of Miedma Produce and their attorneys. Tosca could elaborate if needed, but we do not concur with the opinion that the proposed use is not allowed. The general commerce zoning district and the old obsolete code are very clear in staff's opinion that uses of similar character are intended to be allowed in the zoning districts. And in this case, manufacturing and outdoor storage uses that are allowed in GC, this would be most similar to those. We did host multiple meetings with both owners in an attempt to resolve concerns. Maybe had some progress, but I don't think we've had full agreement between either side. In staff's view, just in conclusion, we do believe that the use, recycling center use on this property is permitted in the GC district per the language in the obsolete code. We don't anticipate any adverse impacts either from a visual standpoint or from a noise, light, odor type of standpoint. This should look and feel like a clean industrial use from the perspective of off-property. All of the development code requirements, regarding the setbacks, landscaping, architectural requirements are met with this particular proposal, and there is sufficient access both for traffic as well as for emergency purposes. Excuse me. This is the case. Typically, the developer will complete all adjacent off-site improvements. So in this case, it's to Baseline Road. Initially, the project will be served by private well and septic. When city systems do expand into this area, they will connect. So Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners, staff does recommend approval of the proposed site plan subject to conditions A through RR. This is a public meeting. Representatives of AIM are here tonight. They do have a presentation prepared and would like to present that to you.
Would you like to come on up? Podium on the right, left.
Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Ben Graff. I'm with Quarles and Brady at 2 North Central Avenue. I'm here this evening representing American Iron and Metal in regard to the quite phenomenal presentation that Ken has already provided. And for that reason, I will do my best not to be repetitive. We've been working with Ken and his team and the city for over 2 years on this site, and we're very excited to be here tonight for your site plan approval. I may have normally foregone a presentation, but for the fact that Medema has proposed some opposition to this site, we wanted to be here to address that. Quite frankly, the opposition's been a bit perplexing. It's been difficult to get to the bottom of what the issues are. I think we're starting to solve the mystery, and I was hoping we would be bringing a compromise to you today. I'll share the compromise we offered. But at this point, I don't believe we have an agreement in place with the neighboring property owner. We also have Christian Brisbois from American Iron and Metal here tonight, and Kevin Fawcett from Colley Architects, who of course is responsible for all the phenomenal design, elevations, and architecture behind this site. Ken did a great job giving you the context of the site. This is a massive site, and that's incredibly important to understand. At 95 acres, just the scale of this site, and the fact that our western boundary is over 2,100 linear feet long. It's a very, very large site. It's important to kind of get that into context. This is the kind of context of our surrounding uses. We have some other intense uses in the area. We have a milling area to the south. We have the dairy farm to our north, and Medina is directly to our west. What I want to also point out is in green, you can see our AIM, or American Iron and Metal site. It is one of the few incorporated City of Buckeye parcels in this area. To our west, north, and south, and even to our east is unincorporated Maricopa County land that doesn't currently contribute to the city tax base and contributions. As you can see from the list of stipulations, which by the way, we are in 100% agreement with, we are not contesting or have any issues with the stipulations provided by staff. Those have all been negotiated. I want to thank the city attorney's office also for the time that was put into negotiating those stipulations. Those will provide a significant benefit to the city as part of us being within the city. And the zoning item in question, I'm not sure how much this will come up tonight from Medina, but in approximately March of this year, Medina did contact through their attorney, Paul Gilbert, the city, and then eventually our client, stating that they believe that the proposed use is not even legal or permitted on the site. That's been put to bed. That's been put to bed since 2022, as far as I'm concerned. Be happy to answer questions on that, but the use is permitted as of right on this. And in fact, it's the type of employment under the general plan designation, employment use that the city's been trying to pull here. I'll skip over these slides for brevity because Ken did a great job going over our overall operations. But this is a nationally recognized, nationally smoothly operated recycling operation that will bring employment and a very much needed streamlined use for these types of metals. Probably one of the things that makes us most compatible is the fact that the shredding will not occur on this site. There's nothing wrong with the sites that do have shredding, but our site doesn't have the shredding, and we really just process those on site. So a lot of the noise that would go along with that is not on this site. This is a really important slide. I apologize if the text is a little small, but this is just to make sure you're aware of, and it's as much of a compliment to the city as it is to Cawley Architects and the work that they've put in. I've really only recently been brought onto this case because of this unfortunate opposition. Cawley and AIM have been leading these discussions with the city since 2022. And as you can see from the timeline, between 2022 and January of 2023, that was the timeline in which our client and Cawley Architects met with the city, obtained all the confirmations that this use was a permitted use and a welcomed use here at the city, that it would be subject to a site plan approval. And AIM, my client, didn't even purchase the property until January of 2023. So sometimes you'll have applicants before you that are about to close on the property. If they get the zoning, they're a future owner. That's not the case with my client. They are a City of Buckeye property owner, proud to be here, and really we're just waiting on this site plan, and then of course eventually building permits to come to fruition. And so we've been working since 2022 on this site, working through the site planning, and staff has done a phenomenal job getting us to just a superb, absolute superb site plan. This is just for background. We obtained, not really willy-nilly, but quite the opposite. We obtained in writing confirmation that our use was permitted before we purchased the property, obtained this zoning verification letter through planning and through the city attorney's office as well. Before I hand it over to Kevin, just to point on some things, let me just give you a little bit of a flavor of what we're hearing from Medina in terms of their opposition. At first, they told us we weren't welcome and that the use was illegal and that we should either rezone or find another property. That proved to be incorrect. Second, they asked us to revamp our site plan, which was really in its final stages with the city at that point, to push any and all buildings, retention areas further east and away from Medina. Our site plan was very much settled at that point. They had stated that they were concerned about standing water. They were also stating that they were concerned that without a solid wall along the western edge of our property, that somehow pests would infect their produce or their future packaging plant. And that's a really important point here. The complaints we've received are really not about the existing use of the site. It's that Medema plans in the future to rezone and create a packaging plant on site. There are no applications into the county nor the city for annexation or anything like that at this time, so it's a future proposed use. We haven't really seen the connection between why our use creates more pests or not having a solid wall somehow infects their site. City staff has been perfectly fine with that CMU wall that you've seen on the north, along with the fencing on the west. And then one of the last items, which is the most surprising, is they asked us to get rid of all of the landscaping along our western edge, to get rid of the required landscaping setback. That actually would have, I'm gonna get in trouble because that actually would have saved my client a lot of money and future maintenance costs. But we've spoken with Ken, we've spoken with the city, and we believe that the landscaping provides an incredible benefit, not only to the employees on the site, it makes it a much more beautiful site, as you saw from the renderings, but it also provides a buffer. The rail cars that come onto this site are about 15, 16 feet in height. They'll be taller than our fence, and we want that mature landscaping so that when folks are coming down Baseline Road, they see a row of trees. So we've rejected the Medema's request to get rid of our landscaping. We've addressed their concerns with our retention, any standing water issues, and that left the wall, and I know I'm being a bit verbose, but I just want you to have the background for this evening. The wall itself, and I'm going to skip to something really quick and then I'll hand it over to Kevin. The wall itself is quite extensive. So if you look at in blue at the left side, this would be what it would take to place a wall along the entire western property. It's over 2,000 feet, linear feet. We estimate that cost to fall somewhere between, under current prices, $400,000 to $500,000 for the wall, which staff and AIM have deemed to not be necessary. However, in our most recent meeting with Mr. Gilbert and Medema, they stated that this was maybe their most important concern. So that you are aware that we're not just saying no and that we're not willing to compromise, although we still don't quite understand the full benefit of the wall. We did offer to Medema and Mr. Gilbert that our client would build the wall if Medema would be willing to split the cost 50-50, which we thought was very equitable at a price tag of $400,000, maybe even $500,000, that we would be willing to put that in. And again, this benefits our client in no way, in no manner. But yet Medema has stated that somehow that will help them meet future FDA regulations for their food processing on their site. This afternoon, Mr. Gilbert rejected that offer and said that he would not accept anything other than a full concession on our side to pay for 100% of the wall that we don't need, and said he would be here, or his firm would be here tonight in opposition. So thank you for letting me go over that background. I know it was a bit verbose, but I did want you to have the background on kind of where we've been and just how long we've been working with the city and staff to address these issues. And again, our confusion at the end of the day as to why we're here with this level of opposition. But Kevin, I'll hand over this to you for any further clarifications.
I didn't get the rundown.
That is
I'm
forward,
a forward
and
and
that's
backwards.
Yep.
Well, good evening. My name is Kevin Fawcett with Colley Architects, 730 North 52nd Street, Phoenix. And Ken, you knocked it out of the park. You really gave a fantastic presentation. And so I won't try to be too verbose in terms of reiterating things that Ken's already expressed. A couple of quick clarifications, just so that we're clear. This is a non-ferrous facility. What that means is that limits the type of material that comes on site. When you shred a car, the bulk of the car is steel, and so at the shredding facilities, a magnet is used to pull most of the ferrous material out of there. What we're chasing with a facility like this is the glass, the copper, the aluminum, any of the other metals that are in place, and any of the other valuables, the glass being another one, and essentially commodifying them and being able to put them back into the supply stream. That is essentially the essence of this business, and to express my own personal opinion. When we think about what the future is in terms of environmental compliance, the Green New Deal, however you may feel about any of those things, and trying to really enact some version of recycling and what recycling looks like in the future. AIM is an organization that is really the boots on the ground for that. This is the type of organization and the type of facility that really sets a trajectory for future development that highlights a more circular supply stream. And so again, on that point, we're very happy to participate in this. The other thing that I'd like to highlight, of course, is that during phase one, access to the site will be predominantly through the second entrance to the site. At full build-out with adjacent development, you will see a further development of our far west entry. But as you can see on the site plan, where truck scales are, where the truck traffic is, the circulation patterns, everything on this site is tailored to come into that one specific entrance. And we've had extensive conversation and negotiation with not just planning, but traffic and streets to make sure that we comply with all city requirements and are positioned to not be in any way an impediment to further development in the area. The other thing is that there was a discussion about the operating hours. What Ken had characterized as the retail facility at the north end of the site, that is a facility that will operate from 6 to 6, Monday through Saturday. But the downstream building is essentially a giant cover for a giant sorting machine. You know, something on the order of, well, as Ken had noted, about 60,000 feet footprint of a giant machine that the materials are fed into it and then essentially get exited into bins all around the building where they can be, again, packaged and commodified to go off-site. And as a result, that type of machinery is actually most effective when it's operating continuously. And the material that would be coming in via rail and or truck, there will be enough material that facility will be working very close to 24/7. That is really the guts of the investment here and frankly key to the success of this facility. Beyond that, I don't really have much more to describe other than what Ken had highlighted. And again, Ken, I'm going to hire you to do all of my future presentations. But moving forward, if there's any other questions that anybody might have about any of the operations or any of the aspects of the site design or building design, I'd be more than happy to go through those. You'll see the master plan. Well, actually, this one is the phase one plan. The master plan was what we were looking at previously. As we get into the elevations for the buildings, again, you'll see that we've got a mix of materials. We've tried to apply a much more contemporary design to something like this. Our experience is that these types of facilities are very often not thought of as architectural projects. And they are thought of as being strictly utilitarian with no real, if you want to call it, street presence. We've worked very hard to incorporate a variety of materials, a variety of colors and shapes, such that this is not your standard pre-engineered metal building. And then the only other thing that I would like to run through very quickly, there may be some opposition from Medema about the way that our stormwater retention has been structured. If you look at the southeast corner of the site, the southwest corner of the site, you'll see that just above that, there are a series of dashed lines. AIM is investing an exorbitant amount of money in developing underground storage such that we can segregate all of the stormwater flows from the developed portions of the site, put that water underground, then put it through a passive filtration system that removes all of the pollutants and then allows us to discharge from that system at a rate into that southwest basin such that we are able to evaporate and have full compliance with what is essentially a standard requirement that that basin be empty within 36 hours. The other basins that you see on the site are largely what we characterize as temporary basins, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with what that's like when, particularly when subdivisions come along and they're waiting for future development. You do large, shallow basins in order to capture that storm water. Again, the larger size of those basins is again to provide compliance with that 36-hour requirement. Do you have any other questions that I might be able to answer?
Questions from the commission at this time?
Yeah, I got a couple questions maybe. The types of metals, is it all like tin or whatever? Is there anything that's going to be in there like magnesium or something that can burn? I wouldn't say that, I don't know that magnesium is one of their major products, and I'm getting a heavy no from their team. Think of it primarily as, the vast majority of their material is shredded automobiles. And so just think about the metals that are predominant with automobiles: steel, aluminum, copper, and glass. And the other thing you were talking about, your retention and such, you said some of the metals are going to be stored outside? Is that true? Yeah, there will be some small piles of metal that are stored outside. They're primarily associated with what was characterized as the retail component. And again, those piles there is an operational concern that AIM is extremely aware of and extremely sensitive to in terms of not letting those piles exceed specific sizes, exceed the screening that we have adjacent to those areas. So yes, there are piles on site, and again, that goes to part of our stormwater retention strategy. My question is really not that it's piled, but the runoff from rain. Is it greasy, oily? Things are going to run off outside of your property? Again, everything that you've seen, and let me go back real quick. So everything that you see in the developed area along the western end of the site there, all of that water is captured separately from the rest of the site, goes into underground containment, and then is specifically filtered and processed and is discharged at a very specific rate into that southwest basin so that evaporation can occur and that essentially all that storm water is gone within that 36-hour limitation. One of the other things that I want to highlight, because I know that this is something that your team should be very sensitive about, that basin does not get a dry well. We are working primarily with if you want to call it, shallow percolation and evaporation. The idea there being that as we're, again, it's an operational concern. They have operational staff dedicated specifically to this purpose. The idea here is that that basin is designed for regular maintenance, such that should there be, through testing any metals that are in that soil is essentially excavated out and taken off-site for disposal at the appropriate type of landfill. I appreciate your answers. And I would like to just mention it's probably the best looking recycle center I've ever seen. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Ragsdale?
So there will be no hazardous materials going through this?
If you're talking about, sorry, that's a very big catch-all phrase. So when I think about hazardous materials, I think about frankly, I think about chemicals. And in my experience, that's predominantly what I work with when I'm doing hazmat studies. Here, what we're talking about are not exactly materials, but slivers of metal. And so, again, will there be any metals on the site that upon a pile being moved or taken off site, are there any residual metals that stay on the ground? There will be a minimal amount of that, but again, our stormwater design specifically addresses that particular issue.
Thank you.
Could you point out which of the which of the buildings is 63 feet?
Of course. So the larger building that is to the south, for lack of a better explanation, and I don't have a pointer here, but
It's the back building.
yeah, it's the back building. So the back building is obviously several hundred feet off of Baseline Road. The front building, again, is much smaller, maxes out at about 39 feet tall. And when you think about sight lines, and you'll see that part of what Ken's presentation showed was sight lines from, frankly, very far away. I mean, I think one of the views that you showed was from about a quarter-mile away. That is probably the maximum impact that you're ever going to see in terms of there being a building there. As you approach the building, the sight lines largely resolve themselves, and it's primarily because of the screening that Ken's team has coordinated with ours in terms of whether it was site walls, chain link fences with slats, and the appropriate landscape to screen that area from, say, like from 8 feet to 16 to 20 feet.
Okay. From a question to the city, is 63 feet within the limits that we normally approve?
Yes, Vice Chair, Commissioner, yes, it's actually well under the maximum that is allowed in the GC district. I want to say the maximum is, I think 100 feet or so, I believe, yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's my only questions.
I would agree that this is a nice looking recycling building. You go through the city or cities, the recycling buildings look like a junkyard. This one does not. As far as the concern from the neighbor, the wall, I can understand the walls are more aesthetic in the industrial area because pests are going to find their way no matter what. Was there anything else specific that would say they couldn't get their FDA approval or anything like you were saying?
So we can only go off the conversations that we've had, and I'll use it to give another thanks to the city. So Councilmember Yunker has been hosting these discussions, and actually even as late as, or recently as last week, hosted an in-person meeting with all of us at the table. And so because of that, we've been able to hear firsthand what those concerns are. The items noted, and a representative from Medina is here, so we can allow him to also discuss it. But the items that were listed associated with the wall, there was a discussion of whether or not rodents could get back and forth, again, without, in my opinion, any connection to why our site would attract or create that. Other types of pests, and then they wanted general screening, and said that it was a very important item to them. But again, remember, we took that, to heart and offered this compromise for the wall. So, and we're not taking that off the table either. I mean, if they want to participate 50-50 on that, we're happy to honor that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. If you could have a seat, don't go far, just in case.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I've got a couple comment cards. Kurt Waldeer.
Thank you, Chair and Commission members. My name is Kurt Waldeer. I'm representing Medina Produce, the direct neighbor of this site, as you know. My address is 701 North 44th Street, Phoenix, Arizona. So yes, we do have many concerns about this site. Minima, as you were told, is they grow produce in this area and they package it and distribute it nationwide. They're really being squeezed out of a lot of their other locations in the Phoenix area, and they bought this property back in 2019 to be their next packaging plant because it's surrounded by agricultural uses. They are currently farming it, cultivating produce there. And they're doing that until they're ready to build this new packaging plant. And they've committed to Councilman Yunker in this meeting that Mr. Graff mentioned last week. They committed to Councilman Yunker that we will be incorporating when we build that packaging plant. So just wanted to put that out there. This recycling facility obviously has major concerns for any kind of food production, food processing, and food packaging right adjacent to it. This facility is coming into a primarily agricultural area, which is, they know full and well. We've been trying to make our issues known and clear since at least April of this year. We've been trying to reach out to Mr. Graff and his team since April. We did have a meeting with him in May and expressed our primary concerns. First of all, the wall, as he mentioned, is our primary concern. A simple chain link fence simply isn't adequate to protect this against pests. We understand that, pests are a matter of nature, but simple bringing these materials off a rail car across the valley, from across the nation even, right up adjacent to our property line, we feel that a block wall will do a much better job in protecting our produce, and our future plans for this property with that CMU wall, as opposed to this very permeable and simply fragile chain link fence. And that's our issue number one. Secondly, is the landscaping that we requested back in May to remove. The reason we don't want that is because that attracts birds and other pests to nest there, and then they get into the produce and everything that's being packaged. They actually have a recent issues with that on another site. We can accommodate this landscaping if we have to, but it'll create significant restraints on our future plans for that packaging plant. It'll require major accommodations for that, but we would respectfully request from this commission that stipulations are incorporated for that full CMU wall down the western side and the removal of that landscaping. We were in that meeting with Councilman Yunker. Scott McCoy, the city attorney, confirmed that they will not be delayed in any way, that these revisions can be done administratively. So we think it's a very reasonable request on our end that can be accommodated for this use that's coming into this entirely agricultural area, this very deleterious use.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair and Commissioners. I'm here for any questions if you have any.
Can't ask you questions, I'm sorry.
No worries, I understand.
Thank you. Ben Graff?
That was me. I just added a card for good measure. Okay, just to be efficient.
Ben?
Just to be efficient.
All right. I've got a couple questions for you, Mr. Galika. And I know that you can't answer these, but maybe you can get me an answer. What's growing on and I want Medea? Medema?
Vice Chair, I've heard it pronounced like 3-4 different ways. I say Miedma, it sounds like Medema, I don't know.
Well, I was just following you.
Yeah, Medea, I think that was a movie series. Medea's something or other, Tyler Perry.
Stop it.
Yeah.
And you don't know?
What is growing on their property? I believe I've been told it's alfalfa, but I cannot confirm that myself. Kurt might be able to. It's cabbage mostly. He's okay.
Okay. and I may be prying and you tell me whether I am or not, but what's the holdup on going 50-50 on the wall? I mean,
Well,
I know you can't answer
I
that.
definitely can't answer. That's probably a question best answered by Mr. Waldier and maybe his client to see if they'd be, you know, what the holdup on paying half the cost of that wall is. All I can say from the city standpoint is it's not required to do a solid wall between two industrial properties or future industrial properties. In this case, we're doing a solid screen with the slats and the chain fence and the landscaping, which is a code requirement. So striking that or not requiring the landscaping along the west property line there, staff certainly wouldn't be in support of it. Tosca would have to comment if it's something we could even do, even if we wanted to, because the code says you have to do it. I think in the long run, that's however that property to the west develops. Again, there's no plans currently in for that. All we have is somebody saying that they might want to do this in the future. They will themselves have landscape requirements on their own property that they will have to meet, and just because it might attract some birds, that's not necessarily the reason that the city is going to abandon some of the aesthetic goals that the city has. So we certainly will. My suggestion has always been, is there a certain type of tree that doesn't attract the wildlife? Is there a certain type of shrub that is going to make this problem, exacerbate this problem? I think we could work within the realm of you know, some flexibility there. But I don't think getting rid of the landscaping is an option. I mean, it's not to me anyway.
My last question, what's eating the cabbage now?
Coyotes? I have no idea.
No, you can't answer, you can't. Thank you, Mr. Kalika. Any other questions from commissioners?
I guess my question is this: if the council approves this tonight, will the negotiations continue on between the two companies that seem to be at odds with the requirements?
Vice Chair, Commissioner Basler, it's certainly able. There are two private property owners that have the ability to continue those negotiations, and if they want to make changes, they agree to something down the road, they can bring that to the city. It wouldn't be something that the city's going to police, that there's some sort of agreement.
Mr. Trippiano? Mr. Ragsdale? Any more questions?
So if we approve this tonight, the recycling plant can go ahead and do everything that they planned without negotiations?
Vice Chair, Commissioner Ragsdale, the next steps would be the recycling plant would submit for construction drawings permits. Those are technical reviews. Those are not, you know, things that need to go to Planning and Zoning Commission or City Council. And upon receiving those, yes, they would be able to construct the facility as proposed or as presented to you tonight.
Anything else?
No.
Mr. Manager?
I'm wondering, excuse me, did I understand that the the landscaping is required by code and the fence is not required by code?
Vice Chair, Commissioner Manuel, the code requires for industrial properties such as this, when they're adjacent to residentially zoned property, even though it's being used for agricultural purposes, it's technically in the county as a residential zoning district, it requires a 30-foot buffer, landscape buffer. Within that buffer, regular plantings of trees that will grow tall and help further screen any industrial use that might be occurring. From a wall standpoint, code does require a solid an opaque wall or fence. In this case, it's the chain link fence is allowed because it's not adjacent to a public street. You're not allowed to use chain link fence when it's very visible, essentially, but you can use it in these situations where you're 1,500, 2,000 feet off of the nearest public street, as long as they keep those slats in the wall. If it was a see-through chain link fence, that wouldn't meet our requirements.
So we couldn't stipulate to AIM to take away the trees and build a solid wall. We could not do that anyway, right?
I would defer that question to our Assistant City Attorney, Tosca, but it's not something that I would be in support of personally.
Right. That's true.
What Mr. Galika's outlined are the requirements of the code, and so to impose something other, in addition to the code, would require some additional finding that, an additional discussion. So if there are additional conditions that you would like to impose tonight, then that should be discussed, and then we can determine if that is something that would be allowed. But I think are there any questions on the current parameters of the code or the parameters of additional conditions that the commission might consider?
I was just wondering, even if we decided we wanted to impose these solid wall and take away the trees, we couldn't really do that by the code, right?
That is correct.
That's kind of what I was asking. Thank you.
I have a question.
Ms. Ragsdale.
But both parties could negotiate further if we did not approve it tonight.
Vice Chair, well, Tosca's thinking about her answer to that. I think, and applicant Ben Graff might want to address that question as well, but I think dating back to April, these discussions have kind of been ongoing, and they've hit a loggerheads. There's just no agreement in sight. I'm not sure if any additional time would help to have the two parties agree to any sort of compromise.
Hold on. Are you finished, Ms. Ragsdale?
I'm finished.
Now, may I have a motion from the,
I would make a motion that we approve site plan PLZ SP-23-00017, subject to conditions A through R.
Second.
it's been moved and second. Any opposition?
Are you going to call for a vote?
Yes, I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed?
No.
Motion carries. All right.
And Vice Chair, members of the commission, the applicant is prepared to proceed with item 3B that was previously skipped. Thank you.
Mr. Bandon, don't run away.
Vice Chair, members of the Planning Commission, good evening and thank you for attending this evening. I did kind of want to go away. I drank the whole bottle of water, but I'm here. So I'm going to keep this as brief as I can. This has been a project that has been in the queue for 2 years. So we talk about a long time coming. This is AZ85. It's an industrial park. It's a rezone case, and it's case number PLZZ 22-00013. Let me be brief here, but I have a couple of exhibits here because it's a rezone case. The area where it's located, it's approximately 145 acres. It's 143.9, located on the northeast corner of Southern and SR 85, or State Route 85. You're seeing in the zoning map that it's currently zoned planned residential. So it's in that area right there. It's a beigey color. I did my best to clip just part of our zoning categories. We have that many because we have our older zoning categories and our newer ones. But Because of the general plan case, that was a major general plan amendment, was actually conducted by Mr. Kangalika, I would say about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago now. The whole area along the SR 85 corridor is now an employment corridor. So what we're seeing this evening is a case to do a PAD, or planned area development, to rezone this area from planned residential to fit within the general plan or the vision for the city's area for this corridor. So no longer going to be neighborhoods, but rezone to an employment area. I created just a couple of slides. I kept it very brief, no cool moving things. There's nothing jumping on you. Sorry, Ken leads the way with that, but I like to be very simple and kind of talk my way through things. I used the exhibits that were actually in the narrative. That way, nothing's going to be new in there, that you can actually see what's going on. So the site, plain and simply, is the area in red. Kind of highlighted it very specifically. Within the narrative, they reference 263rd Avenue, they reference Rozier, but like I said, the whole thing occurs on that approximate 145 acres on Southern and SR 85. The narrative, over time, the city has made some changes. It specifically says, hey, we're going into this PAD overlay. We have since adopted a new standard. We just call it planned area development. So it's no longer an overlay. So we're actually calling it that. That's the way it actually is legally to be moving forward through the ordinance. So let me show you a couple of exhibits and the reason why they requested this. First and foremost, a PAD, the reason why you do a planned area development is to create that flexibility. We don't grant these, the word that was used tonight, I love it, willy-nilly. I actually like that. We don't grant these just willy-nilly. When it comes to a PAD or planned area development, the idea here is to create flexibility with the development. It's not hard zone. Hard zone saying, here's our requirements. And specifically, you'll actually talk about I-1. I-1 was the baseline for this PAD. I-1 says, hey, here's your requirements, here's your setbacks, here's your heights. Well, they wanted to create some flexibility. In order to say, hey, we're going to create some flexibility, it's got to be a give and take relationship. It's a relationship between the city and what they want and what we're asking for. So out of this, we're going to get some higher level requirements, specifics on uses, specifics on setbacks, and out of this, they're going to actually get allowances for more flexibility and signage and more flexibility on the actual uses and exhibits. You're going to see here in just a second, creating allowances to be an industrial park to industrial park with a frontage of commercial along Southern. The city was willing to accommodate these this uses or mix of uses from light manufacturing, assembling, warehousing, and things as simple as office and retail related uses along the corridor. I'm using exhibits from their plan. Very simply, I pulled 6A concept and 6B concept, showing you first and foremost that there's more than one ownership here. The property on the west is Cardinal Capital, and the property on the east is ALBO or Albo property. So they were talking at one point in time, if they develop separately, this creates flexibility for them. If they develop together, they can have a different use. But the idea is they're not stuck to these uses. It creates that flexibility, but has certain guarantees for the city. Plain and simply, here's what they're actually requesting from a commercial standpoint and from an I-1 standpoint, which is light industrial. What they're looking at from building heights of 50 feet is going to be the maximum to setbacks. Now, the city likes this concept, and staff, I say city, not saying city. The staff likes this concept because of the flexibility it creates. Specifically, the ability to, instead of just being all I-1 zoned, if we did it straight I-1 zone, you're going to be light industrial across the board, more of the warehouse distribution. This plan creates that ability to soften the frontage instead of doing a big building, to do small office type of buildings. It could be retail type of buildings. It could be something, if so needs to serve the neighborhood adjacent to there, it could even be food retail. So it creates that flexibility and kind of, that's the first thing you see is that high quality commercial development and then the industrial larger buildings behind it. That is a big win for the city in that respect. Also out of it, they are producing concepts. At one point in time, there was a user more than 2 years ago, Ryan Companies, but companies like Ryan Companies, like designers like Ware Malcolm that come in for major users, all these different people can come in and design stuff. But what they're saying is going, hey, we're going to produce this high quality development, not only from the commercial perspective, but also from industrial light manufacturing perspective. Here's a couple of exhibits, and they're very selective on their exhibits. And I was very selective too, saying, don't just give me anything. I want to see stuff that has movements, and give me stuff that has glass and different materials that is not only meeting our code, but in many respects exceeding our code. And that's kind of the high level concepts they're giving us talking about that. If you read the narrative, it's written by landscape architect, Mr. Jack Gilmore. Did a very good job. I've actually really enjoyed Jack, working with Jack Gilmore over the past couple years, and his ability to grasp the concepts I'm asking for and put them on paper. He wrote them down and created this narrative. If we choose to move forward this evening, this planned area development, what we are adopting is, well, what the idea is recommending to council to adopt is that narrative, is that red square right here. We're saying this red square is going to have that full narrative's requirements and outline. In my staff report, you'll read that one of the big asks was specifically for this area was to have flexibility in the signage. That was their ask. And the reason why they wanted the flexibility in the signage is because of their frontage along the SR 85. Because these buildings don't have a direct frontage on there, and we don't even know if they're going to want to use it, but they have that ability to create bigger signage along the SR 85. And of course, they have to tastefully do so using our sign code, but they actually have more flexibility on the square footage. Staff was comfortable with that ask and with the providing a narrative describing the quality of the development and the flexibility in development. That being said, I made it extra fun for them after having it in my hands for 2 years. I had conditions created a year ago. The ownership wanted more flexibility. When you have two owners, it's like two brothers, sometimes they tussle. The tussle came right at the time for our planning commission. I pulled that staff report and we brought it back online when everybody agreed. They brought it back for staff for review, a couple additional reviews, and I added all these conditions. And the conditions is more in line with the conditions that we have in general, with planned area developments, with rezones, with CMPs, CMP amendments. And when it came to them, and what you saw, they actually had a couple minor changes that staff was willing to strike. One was in condition D as listed. They have conditions A through Y listed on there. Condition D speaks to a MID, or Maintenance Improvement District. Our city engineer, Ron Mall, did confirm that this will not be required specifically for a PAD or for a rezone. The other one that had a minor amendment was condition L. And once again, because it was a boilerplate and I added it to them last second, there was an oversight on the language. It refers to a CMP or a community master plan amendment. I struck it and changed it to a PAD because that's what we're looking at this evening. So in your hands, you actually have a report that says conditions A through Y is recommended. We so revised it and staff is recommending that we conduct a public hearing and recommend approval with conditions A through X. I have the applicant here, George Quinniff, as listed on the report, and I also have, just like there's two owners, there's also two applicants I work with on the daily. The other one is Mr. Jack Gilmore is here as well, and they can answer any additional questions you may have. So, thank you.
Would the gentleman like to come up and make a presentation?
Good evening, Vice Chair, members of the Commission. For the record, my name is Jack Gilmore, Gilmore Planning and Landscape Architecture. 2211 North 7th Street, Phoenix. As Sean said, great presentation. We've been working with Sean for the last 2 years. We had a little bit of a hiccup in the middle, but we worked it out. And Sean has been giving us some good insights, and we're glad to be here tonight to make this presentation. We think the site is at a great location on this employment corridor, strategic, And as Sean said, we're looking for the flexibility. The users that come in are going to be different kinds of industrial distribution and or manufacturing. And they all like to have their own size of buildings and footprints and architecture. So the city is well protected with the site plan approval process and the planning process. And as soon as we get water in the area, I think we're excited to get this project moving. And I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Does the commission have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
I looked at that property this morning and drove by it. I can't see a residential area in there, so I think this is a great, better usage of that property to have it converted to this plan.
Thank you. Yeah, we agree.
I got a couple questions. To the east, that's planned residential right now, correct?
Due east is going to be employment.
Okay, to east, I'm sorry. I've got, it's the yellow there. Okay, so along 263rd Avenue, the buildings are going to be shorter height? Is that what I'm seeing there?
So Vice Chair Commissioner Trupiano, that is not the case. So the allowance is 50 feet. It can be up to 50 feet. Because it's employment and not adjacent to residential, they can maintain that height. And so the exhibits provided are merely for illustrative purposes only, showing that there's flexibility. But yeah, they always intended to be taller there, unless, creating that flexibility, they can do more commercial or office uses. So it's only up to 50 feet. They may decide to do 25, 30 feet tall. That's the beauty of the planned area development, creating flexibility.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I have none. But I must open it up for a public hearing at this time. Madam Secretary, are there no cards this time? Mr. Goff didn't fill one out this time. All right. If there are no further questions or comments, may I have a motion, please?
We see the recommendation again.
Absolutely.
Oh, Sean.
That makes it easier. Make a motion that we approve PDA's rezoning of PLZZ-23-00.
I apologize. When it's 22-00013, so I didn't change that myself. That's Ken's old case. I was trying to be cool I can and use this slide. So PLZZ 22-00013. If I can change it right now, I would.
Okay, well, whatever you say.
Here we go. I'll change it real quickly so you can see it.
Correct on the
I
agenda.
apologize.
Correct on the agenda. Not there.
It's correct right here,
Paper.
on the paper.
On the paper, okay.
Under.
There we go. Now it's correct. Thank you.
Rezone PLZZ-22-0003, subject to conditions A through X.
As amended.
Thank you. Sorry, I apologize for that.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and second. Call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. And now, we will have a presentation from Mr. Bob Weisner.
Good evening, Vice Chair and Commissioners. Again, my name is Bob Weisner. I'm the Deputy Director in the Community Services Department. Tonight with me is Miranda Gomez, the Community Services Director, and then we also have Sean Wozni with Kimley Horn. He is our consultant working on the project. So the Parks and Recreation Master Plan is the 10-year plan. We last updated this plan in 2016 when Council adopted it. And really, it provides the vision and framework for how we grow parks and recreation services over the next 10 years and beyond. And really, we want to make sure that we update this every 10 years so we're responding to changes in demographics and Buckeye's population needs. This plan will identify the key initiatives and strategies that we'll deploy over the next 10 years and will serve as a roadmap for projects. What this is not, it's not a plan that if council adopts that it's going to result in millions of dollars of projects through the pipeline. So it's not a capital improvement plan, it's not a funding plan, and it's not a project-specific master plan. I'm going to turn it over to Sean, and he's going to talk a little bit more about the project goals. And really what we're going to be focusing on today is talking about what we heard through community and stakeholder input, and then also the draft recommendations, and allow you to respond to those to make sure that we're on the right track as we continue through this process. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sean.
Vice Chair, Commission, thanks for having us tonight. So kind of wanted to go over with you the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, kind of the goals for the project. Want to create a comprehensive and compelling vision and direction for parks and recreation. Propose various approaches for economic accommodating growth while keeping the fiscal picture in balance. Strategically identify gaps and prioritize future improvements in programming for parks and recreation. Gain an understanding of current and desired levels of service and facilities to demonstrate more equitable and distribution of services throughout the city. Understand potential partnerships, opportunities, and funding options. And then evaluate operations and maintenance practices to make sure that we have long-term sustainability throughout the department. Kind of want to highlight some of the department overview of some of the services provided. The Parks and Recreation Department for the city certainly does a lot. They have a recreation center and senior center they provide services out of. Also have the aquatics. They have parks and recreation and trails, special interest classes, sport leagues, programming for all ages, special events, and then they also provide arts and culture programming. As Bob mentioned, really wanted to touch on some of the community engagement, which we utilize to understand our programming amenity needs. So we did this in a wide array. We utilized over 500 statistically valid surveys. We had over 1,000 website surveys. We utilized some other website tools to capture input along the way. We had several focus group and stakeholder participants. We had conventional community outreach meetings as well as virtual ones. We also utilized a pop-up style event that coincided with several of the Parks and Recreation special events. And then we also engaged on social media platforms to really look at a total input of almost over 23,000 inputs of getting some feedback and input along the way. So I wanted to kind of show you an idea on the methodology of the plan. So this is kind of think of it as the spokes on the wheel. So there's several different components that go into the shaping of different recommendations for the plan. We're also going to highlight kind of when we bring these together, or these inputs, we really start to develop our themes, which we see common themes throughout these recommendations and what we're hearing from input. So we touched on the community engagement piece. You saw how important it was to make sure we had a very comprehensive plan to capture that input. We also have inventory and benchmarking that was utilized to look and evaluate your existing park system and amenities in place. We also had individual one-on-one meetings with council and leadership. We also included demographic trends and reviewed previous documents, including the previous Parks and Rec Master Plan from 2016, which is really an excellent plan and provides a great foundation. And then we have the business planning element, which is the level of service, understanding what the right level of service to provide in terms of amenities, programmings for the community, for the city. So here we've got, we're looking at some of the results of what we're seeing in terms of the top needs for citywide amenity and facilities. The blue box is from the Cecilia Valid survey. So again, that's that survey that collected over 500 returns of survey, Cicely Valid. And then the orange below that is the online, so that's over 1,000 surveys completed online. So you can kind of just start to see some of the similarities and how there is a great alignment between the Cecilia Ballard survey as well as the web-based survey. So kind of run through our top amenities and facilities that came out of this. This is based off the Cecilia Ballard survey. We have the aquatics, pools, fitness and exercise, arts performance, outdoor adventure, indoor ball courts, paved multi-use paths, natural preserves, splash pads, nature center, community center, fishing areas, multi-use pathways, and nature centers. The next slide is going to highlight the programming. So along the same lines as the amenities and facilities, we have the blue as the Cecilia Ballard survey, and we have the orange as the online. So here are top needs for programming citywide. We have hobby and interest classes, fitness programs, special events and festivals, art programs. So that's more of like the classes, could be painting or clay, or then we have arts performances, more could be ballet, dances, youth, teen, adult, family programming, educational classes, nature programs, pop-up programs, swim lessons, adult sports, and water fitness programming. I wanted to highlight some of the Cecilia Ballard survey questions and kind of show you some of the results there. So this first one really looks at indicating your support for each potential action the city could take to improve the Parks and Recreation system. On the first one there would be preserve an open space and high value on natural resources. This is something we heard a lot along the way with our different focus group meetings, as well as our one-on-ones and from leadership and key stakeholders. So over 87% really support that. The develop new indoor recreation facilities, we had 84% support in that as well. The green there is the very supportive, and then the orange is the somewhat supportive. Invest in updating and improving existing city parks, so maintaining what we have, that was very important, 81% supporting there. Identify and acquire land to develop more city parks. Again, one of the key challenges for the city is looking at the growth, so over 80% support that. And then constructing new aquatic facilities, again, that was one of our higher priorities we heard along the way in terms of the outreach, as you just saw. 80% support that. Development of new pathways, multi-use pathways and trails, 79% supporting this. And then increase the variety of number of recreation program opportunities, 77 support, looking for some new variety in terms of the programs offered. The next one here wanted to highlight which organizations do you or members of your household use for recreation programs and facilities. Just wanted to see the distribution of where people are, how they're getting their recreational needs met. Over 53% on utilizing facilities within the city. Homeowners or HOAs, we have 35% folks relying on those facilities. We have neighboring cities, 27%. Private fitness centers, 25%. Churches or other religious organizations, 20%. Use of county facilities, 15%. Local schools, college, universities, 15%. And then private sport club leagues, 14%. And then none of these is 12%. Kind of one of the big challenges that we wanted to utilize in terms of how we're going to approach was, again, the growth and how big the city is with over 640 square acres. It was really important to come up with a strategy that would really start to break down and look at specifics in terms of the different planning areas. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that here along the way, but you see here we kind of looked at the 7 planning areas. And the first one here, overall, how well are your household needs for parks and recreation amenities and programs being met by your HOA? So here we had 34% mostly met and 34% partially met. So again, this really set up how we could approach in terms of the growth and how we can provide recreation amenities and programmings. Next question, do you live in a neighborhood managed by a homeowner association or HOA? This really starts to show you over 82% really are within a HOA type plan community and are utilizing some of those recreation facilities for their recreation needs. This next one, please rate your level of support for dedicated funding options that enable the preservation of open spaces and development of parks, trails, and recreation facilities in Buckeye. So here, about 73% support the potential for use of bonds, dedicated sales tax, or other agreeable options to help fund potential recreation improvements. So here, again, we're getting back to that planning area. So we had the 7 planning areas. This really started to hone in on those individual needs. We met with all these different planning areas. We had meetings and we met with their associations and had people come out. So we kind of brought the meeting to them. So here you can see the amenities and facilities kind of across the top there. And then down you start to see those planning areas. So you see they're kind of highlighted by the color. So we have the North Buckeye, the Sun Valley Parkway, West Buckeye, Central Buckeye, Historic Buckeye, South Buckeye, and East Buckeye. And this was input that was based on the online survey. And kind of the reason being is the statistically valid survey, some of the population areas are just like on the south, would require us to kind of package up and start to combine those planning areas in order to keep that statistically valid survey meeting those requirements. So again, as we talked about before, we really saw a lot of similarities and strong alignment between both the stat valid and the online. So we really feel comfortable this is a great representation of what their needs are. So you can kind of see, it really starts to tell you how they are, can differ from different planning areas as we go through, which is going to be key when we start to look at recommendations for these areas. This is the same chart, but looks at the programming side. So again, where those interests lie within those planning zones, you can start to see kind of there are some alignment, but then you kind of see some different needs for some of those different areas. And that also plays off of the demographic as well, which is a big part of this study as well, is utilizing, understanding population in these different planning areas as well. What you see here is kind of a top priorities for investment. This is kind of bringing it all together, most of those inputs and some of the other elements. So we had the community outreach piece, the benchmarking, which is a piece that we're working currently on too, is again, how do we stack up? How does Buckeye stack up to other Valley cities? So we have that. We have the demographic and trends. We spoke a little bit about that and what's going on kind of in terms of a national level, but also within the state and local level as well. And then we had focus group meetings. We heard a lot of these same, meeting with a lot of these user groups and having the same needs. And then again, we mentioned the leadership, stakeholder interviews, what we heard with those folks. The top 5 here, we have the aquatic pool facilities, fitness and exercise facilities, cultural centers and visual and performing arts, outdoor adventure activities, indoor basketball, volleyball courts. So as we looked at that circle, the spokes on the wheel, we talked about all these inputs and how they kind of come together. We don't just utilize the input in terms of the outreach or the state, the surveys or the inputs from the outreach. We also are looking at all those other influences, right? So we just kind of mentioned that what came to the top with some of those focus group meetings, input from the individual interviews, as well as what we've learned in terms of our assessments, as well as our level of service. So kind of bringing the common themes together, we had 5 that really rose in terms of how those recommendations kind of fit together. The first one is celebrate our natural resources. The second one is enhance community connectivity. Third one is grow a well-distributed park system. Fourth one is strategically provide programming opportunities. And then the last one is reinvest in existing assets. So I wanted to kind of walk through the overarching recommendations and then kind of provide some key support recommendations. There will be a full list of recommendations with the plan, but wanted to kind of highlight these with you today. The first, opportunities to connect with nature, passive outdoor recreation opportunities, preservation of natural resources and open space, increase access to Maricopa County parks and Buckeye. So again, kind of looking at some support or how we can accomplish some of these key recommendations, explore partnerships, opportunities with nature, for Nature Center with organizations like the Audubon Society, continue to invest in the Rio Reimagined, conduct a grant study on land purchase opportunities, partner with the Flood Control District of Maricopa to maximize green infrastructure drainage solutions as the need develops. So again, we heard a lot of this in terms of the opportunities just with the natural environment. That was a big piece that came out with leadership as well. There are a lot of great assets within the city, from the mountains to the connection with the river, and how it is important to make sure that we are providing access and utilizing resources to allow folks to participate and explore those areas. The next one is enhanced community connectivity. This kind of plays off the option or the idea of creating a multi-use pathway and trail system for that connection, looking at how we can fill in those gaps. But it also plays off the need to connect community. Certainly when we talked about the planning districts and then those different HOA communities, one of the common things we heard is how do we bring these communities together, whether neighboring or throughout the city, and how we provide special event opportunities for these folks along the way, and how we can have different venues throughout the city. So again, the multi-use path trails, that was one of the highest important things we heard, as well as how we get that connectivity, fill those gaps. Invest in the rivers to ridges. Again, this could be utilized, we talked about, other cities in the east have green belts, or how they utilize those to create corridors to connect. Just think of it as an amber necklace here in the desert, how we can utilize the desert and look at those gaps to provide connectivity in terms of the multi-use paths or trails. And then we mentioned the Rio Reimagined initiatives. This is something that the city already participates in terms of how we can provide access and connectivity to the river. Increase special events and festivals. Again, this was something that could be very, it's a great strategy in terms of how we're bringing folks together in the city. Certainly it's very popular in the events that the city already provides, but we heard the need for more and trying to provide those throughout the city. And then strategic communication strategies to build awareness. Again, how do we understand and get the message out in terms of the programs offered? Buckeye we heard in the survey, over 71% utilized the Ion Buckeye. So that was really pretty eye-opening, and it's great to hear that that is working, and a lot of folks do rely on that for understanding what's going on with the city in terms of parks and recreation. Some key recommendations: create a trail connection between Skyline and White Tank Mountain Regional Parks. Add connectivity to trails in Skyline Regional Park. Add connections. Connect rivers to ridges in the city, and then create a 10-year arts and culture plan. The next one is grow a well-distributed park system. Some of the key overarching recommendations here: provide facilities and recreation opportunities to keep up with growth. Certainly growth is one of the big aspects we mentioned earlier, just really the challenge of such a large city in terms of, and then how the city is currently developing in terms of some of these communities. How are we able to keep those up? So we'll kind of talk through some strategies on those. Identify and acquire land for future parks. Partner with HOA communities to provide programs and venues across the city. Partner with school districts to secure dedicated park space adjacent to new school sites. So as we kind of mentioned here, really creating strategies that would allow for different options for the city to partner with the school districts, work with the HOAs, and then also acquire land. So again, it's not going to be an approach that's going to be all on the city. It's going to be how do we work together to provide these facilities and programs throughout. Some of those support recommendations: creating a shared use performing arts space. Work with developers on opportunities to construct parks and master plan communities that could be conveyed to the city. Partner and co-locate future schools and land for a community park, recreation center, aquatics facility, and library. Much like your highly successful library master plan, trying to utilize metrics in terms of growth or population in terms of community, we want to try to provide some of those similar strategies where we're not just going out and developing a community park right away. Opportunities as schools come online to partner with those districts school district to utilize land for potential community park use or other potential recreation center or aquatics facility or a library. Strategically provide programming opportunities, looking at how we can increase special event program offerings, expand arts and culture programming, offer adaptive recreation programs, increase indoor venue options to offer additional programs. Key support recommendations here. Partner with HOAs to host special events in various areas throughout the city. Assess partnerships, opportunities to expand nature-based education programs. Provide adaptive recreation programming for all ages. Explore opportunities to provide recreation programming in master plan communities. Again, trying to find those strategies where we can team up, partner, and bring those different programs to the different areas of the city, as well as how we can work together on utilizing flexible amenity space. Then the last one is reinvest in existing assets. As we mentioned, we did a full inventory of your existing facilities. So some of those recommendations out of this came out were continued focus on asset management and maintaining high quality parks. I just want to point out how well the city is in terms of they're ahead of the curve on asset management. They really have some great strategies that they're currently utilizing, very forward thinking on how they are keeping up with their current access or assets and how they are maintaining current facilities. Great neighborhood identity within the parks. I think this was something that we, again, trying to help build community and how we can create an identity for the system throughout. Design venues to accommodate large gatherings. Balance use and overuse of limited sport fields. Some of those key support, add pickleball courts where feasible in parks. Implement park ranger program. Implement formal volunteer program. Create a gateway on the Monroe Avenue realignment near Town Park. Study connection opportunities between 6th Street Plaza and the City Hall for events. So again, trying to look at what we have, how we can expand that potentially in terms of providing additional venues and how we're going to take care of what we have and maintain that high level of service and quality of maintenance that we currently provide the community. With that, Bob's going to talk through some of the next steps for the plan.
Yeah, so some of the next steps for the master plan is that we'll continue to evaluate benchmarking. So we received a lot of information from some of our sister cities. We still have a few more to get in. So again, where's Buckeye and how do we compare to Avondale, to Goodyear, to Peoria, to Phoenix? So we're going to continue to gather that information and analyze it. We'll also be looking at the level of service that we do provide to residents and what our desired level of service is, and then also look at the organizational structure assessment. We do have additional opportunities for public input. So again, we're here today to the Planning and Zoning Commission to present these draft recommendations and hear what you think about that. And then we'll be coming back to Planning and Zoning on December 10th. Again, we're hoping that at that point you will have the final document, and our hope would be that you would make a motion to recommend approval to Buckeye City Council to adopt the plan. Same with our Community Services Advisory Board. This is our Parks and Recreation Board that Sebastian is also a member of. And so same thing, we'll be presenting to that board tomorrow night, and then again, we'll be going back to them on December 11th. And again, our hope is that they would make a recommendation to approve. We also are going to be going back out to the community. So as Sean mentioned, we had gone out to the different communities to again get the feedback on what they wanted to see represented in the master plan. So again, we're going to share out the results of what we heard. And so we're going to be going throughout Buckeye. So on September 18th, we're going to be at West Park Elementary. On the 24th, we'll be at the Coyote Library. On the 25th, we'll be at the Senior Center. On the 28th, at the Sundance Active Adult. And then in October, we're going to be over at Desert Sunset Elementary in Tartesso, Verado Center on Main on the 21st of October. And then on the 22nd, we'll be up in Festival. And really, we're combining efforts. So for these fired up public meetings, it's going to be one, educating residents on the bond that'll be on the November ballot. We're also going to be talking about the fire department's strategic plan. So they're initiating that process and want to get resident feedback into their department's strategic plan. And again, we're going to be sharing what we heard from residents about the Parks and Recreation Master Plan and the draft recommendations and having them validate that information. And then again, we'll be going to council on December 17th for hopefully a recommendation for them to approve. And actually next Tuesday, 17th, we're also going to be holding a workshop with council too. So those are kind of the next steps in the process, and again, additional opportunities for feedback into the plan. So the questions before the commissioners and vice chair tonight, sort of the 5 themes that Sean presented, are those consistent with feedback that you hear from residents and from stakeholders? Are there other key recommendations that you might hear that you feel should be represented in the master plans? Are there any questions or concerns about what was presented today? And is there anything that you would like to discuss further? So with that, I'll open the floor to the chair, and we would love to hear your thoughts and comments on what was presented tonight.
It was a lot to take in. I actually participated in some of those surveys. I remember seeing them, and there's a lot of good things in there. I don't know what I would pull out of that as one specific thing. That set me off even as a whole thing. I really like the idea of the trails, and I do know we need like a bigger recreation center. When I think of recreation center for the city, I'm thinking like what Goodyear just did not too long ago. Ours is a good one, but it's outlived its time. So, but anyway, on those surveys too, I was wondering, is there it listed things to select, but I don't remember seeing anything in there where you could put in, write in, I'd like to see this kind of thing. It's not listed in
Remember, I think there was an option where you could like self-select or fill in if it, like there was like a other category where you could write in if it wasn't represented though.
I must have skipped that one.
Yeah, there's a lot of options on that survey.
Yeah.
So
and they were pretty good, and I enjoyed going through them, and I see that a lot of the stuff on here that was what I selected too. So I think for now that's about it for me.
Thank you.
I think it sounds absolutely wonderful. My only recommendation would be to start with the swimming pools.
And again, that did ping high on those survey responses, so yeah.
That's all, thank you.
Thank you.
You've done a great presentation. Pickleball courts is what I hear the most about. From being in an active adult community, people are looking for pickleball courts. And you covered it on a recommendation in the last slide, so I was glad to see it there. I had a question on your presentation, and it's about the 3rd or 4th slide, where you list 10 things on the top in one color, 10 things and another on the bottom. I wasn't sure what's the top grouping and what is the bottom grouping?
Sure, so the top grouping is the results of a statistically valid survey that was mailed to a select group of Buckeye residents. And so in that, we had 528 responses. And then the one on the bottom was a non-statistically valid survey. So this was a survey that we posted on social media, and anyone could fill it out. And with that, we had over 1,000 survey responses. So this is really comparing those two subsets of data between the statistically valid and then the non-statistically valid. And you can see that there's a lot of alignment between the two survey results.
There is. I just didn't understand the difference between those two. So maybe when you do your presentation, you can really draw a difference between what created the top 10 and what created the other group of 10. Thank you.
Thank you for the feedback.
Very good.
Well, as a member of the Community Services Advisory Board also, I appreciate that the staff is taking time to present this to planning and zoning and not isolating it just to their department. this is a nice presentation. It's a good plan. I participated in it, as you know. This shows how forward-thinking Buckeye is. Buckeye is not the same town it was 10 years ago when the other plan was done. I heard last week or a week before last that the city of Phoenix hasn't updated their master plan for their Parks and Rec since the 1990s. That, as we all know, this is not this, nowhere is like it was in the 90s. So I appreciate staff going through this and updating this plan because we got to keep it changing or else we're going to grow stale. Everything looks good on the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Weisner, thank you so very kindly. Your presentation was right on point, but I'm going to tell you my personal thoughts, and that is get a bigger recreation center, and I think everybody's screaming the same thing. It's outdated when my kids were 11 and 12, when they used to get kicked out. Sorry, but true. But yeah, thank you for your presentation tonight. It was awesome. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 4, comments from the public. Any members of the audience may comment on a non-agenda item. However, the open meeting laws do not permit the commission to discuss items not listed on the agenda. The commission may direct inquiries to city staff. Madam Secretary, have any speaker request cards been submitted? Mr. Galika, it is your turn.
Planning manager report. Good evening, Chair. I don't have much to share with you tonight other than as of now, we don't have any items for the September 24th meeting. So it is still subject to change, but it's possible we'll have a free Tuesday night in 2 weeks.
That's all you have?
That's it.
Thank you. That was nice. Thank you, Ken. Commissioners, anything else on your hearts and minds before we go home? This meeting's adjourned.